David, a meteorologist, is sent on a government mission to a deserted island to collect weather data for a year. The ship's captain, Axel, drops him off. When they arrive, they see no one, but a little further on, they find a house built for the meteorological department, which is in disarray. Axel feels the place might be dangerous, but David decides to stay. They spot a lighthouse and go to investigate. Axel sends his men back to the boat. The lighthouse is surrounded by strange weapons. Inside, they meet a man named Gruner, who identifies himself as the lighthouse keeper. Axel tells Gruner that David will be taking over. He asks about the previous officer, and Gruner claims he died of typhus, and that his body was lost at sea. Axel is suspicious, and asks David to come back with him, but David refuses. Before leaving, Axel gives David his gun for self-defense. As David organizes his belongings, he finds the previous officer's diary, which contains a picture of his wife and drawings of mysterious creatures. He doesn't pay much attention to the drawings and goes to sleep. The next morning, he goes outside to check the weather and sees some strange marks in the sand. When he looks at Gruner through binoculars, he sees another figure besides him, which quickly disappears. That night, he hears a commotion outside his house. He hides in the basement and sees a creature from the diary enter his house. Another creature peeks through a crack at him, and in a panic, David stabs its eye with a knife and it flees. The next morning, David realizes these creatures only come out at night. He goes to Gruner for help, but Gruner tells him to leave. Disappointed, David decides to protect himself. He digs a trench around his house, fills it with wood and petrol, and waits for the creatures. When they arrive, he shoots at them, but his bullets run out. He sets the trench on fire, which drives the creatures away, but his house also burns down. David has to spend the night outside to save his life, burning his hand in the process. The next morning, David sees Gruner heading toward the sea and follows him. A sea creature attacks him, but David manages to defend himself. Gruner arrives, points a gun at David, and tells him to let the creature go, explaining that it won't harm him because it lives with him. Gruner agrees to let David stay in his lighthouse, but only if David gives him all his supplies: food, alcohol, tobacco, and bullets. In the lighthouse, David sees the creature licking his burnt hand, which helps it heal quickly. David asks Gruner about the creature, and Gruner says he saved its life, and it now sees him as its master. Gruner treats it very poorly. David realizes the creatures attacking the lighthouse are trying to rescue their companion. He names the creature Anneris, meaning mermaid, and they slowly become friends. Gruner tells David that this is his world, and he's the king, and he won't leave. David says he will signal any ship he sees. One night, Gruner takes David to the top of the lighthouse and fires a flare gun to lure the creatures, believing they must kill all of them to survive. David is too scared to do anything, while Gruner kills them alone. The next morning, Gruner threatens David, saying he must kill the creatures if he wants to stay. Another night, Gruner calls the creatures again. David refuses to shoot, so Gruner locks him outside, thinking he is useless. But the next morning, Gruner finds David alive, having killed all the creatures by himself. They continue to work together to kill the creatures for many days. David finds a locket on a creature's neck, similar to one he saw on another's grave. He realizes the creatures are not just monsters, they are like humans who feel grief and want to live in peace. He also finds a picture of Gruner and his wife, and some notes, revealing that Gruner was the previous officer, not a caretaker. That night, David sees Anneris with her companions. A baby creature approaches David and picks up the boat he had carved from bone. David understands the creatures never wanted to harm them. They were fighting Gruner to save their companion. Gruner shows up and orders Anneris back to the lighthouse, but she refuses. Gruner goes mad and fires a flare gun, killing the baby creature. Anneris flees in grief. David confronts Gruner and they fight. Gruner is about to kill David when David tells him he's an officer, not a murderer. Gruner drops his axe in shock. He had hidden his identity because he didn't want to leave the island. Gruner walks out of the lighthouse and sacrifices himself to the creatures, who kill him in revenge. A year later, new officers arrive to replace David. They mistake him for the caretaker because of his long hair. When they ask if he's seen David, he lies, saying David died of a disease, just as Gruner did at the beginning. David has decided to stay on the island, and Anneris, now completely free, stays with him.